Welcome back to another video. A bit of something different today. We're going to be ranking all managers under the ownership of Stefan Rupp. That is 9 managers in total. Stuart McCall both the second time and the third time, 2 completely contrasting spells. Let me know your thoughts on all these managers in the comments down below. Let me know your favourite manager out of them. There won't be many. Let me know the one that you thought deserved the sacking the most and deserved the sacking the least. Like the video if you do, and subscribe if you're new. All support is massively appreciated. So let's waste no further time and get straight into it then. Coming in number 9, Michael Collins. He only managed 7 games, only got 1 win as well. He's the manager I feel sorry the most out of all of them because he did only get 7 games. But when you look at what he did after City, what he did before City, I mean, he went back into football after City as well. I think he went and played for Alfreton Town, so came out of retirement. I think he's now at Sheffield United's academy. He hadn't had a good time of it, and it's definitely ruined his reputation because of one man and one man only, Mr. Rahik. The poor recruitment didn't really help that, but as I'll get onto it a bit later, the signings then affected how we played throughout the rest of the season because the players couldn't play that way. High wages for players who couldn't care less about the football club, and the job was always too big for him. With no experience in football, the next manager he go for after Hughes, if he works or not, I'd like a young manager, but a young manager with experience, a manager who's working his way up, not a Michael Collins who's been thrown in the deep end, who whilst he was managing the academy was still playing for Halifax Town. So never were up to the job, never got given the full backing for me. Whilst there was high wages in that squad, it was nowhere near a good enough squad to be challenging at the top end of League One, or even to be staying up in League One, and that's obviously how the season ended up to be. David Hopkin, I think, is easily one of the worst style of players we've had. Just hoofball to it seemed like Miller who got the favouritism over Doyle, but it seemed like a 4-5-1, if not a 5-4-1. It might have been a 5-4-1, and we were just so deep and just get the ball and hoof it up to the striker who had no one around them, and just so isolated, and we created no chances throughout his spell. There were a few good moments. I think Plymouth, I think we even drew that. It was just dreadful under Hopkin, and when you look at, I don't even know where he's gone after City. We obviously got him from Livingston, where he came with decent praise from Livingston, to be fair. They seem to quite rate him after a couple of promotions, but only managed 35 games, resigned after a defeat to Walsall. I think it was 3-2. Andy Cook got sent off for Walsall that game, I remember as well. But Greenock Morton are in the Scottish Championship. Got sacked. He resigned actually after they were in financial trouble, and then he became a United manager and left after 6 months. And there's nothing to do with that. I don't even know where United are. Championship again in Scotland. So yeah, he's not particularly having a good time of it. The most concerning part about it was, for me, he had enough time. He had 175 days, and when you had it deteriorated the squad, and there were no real good spells for him, and that was the end of his reign. In 7th, I've got Simon Grayson. Now, he came in with a lot of expectation, anticipated to just take us to a next level after a win of 5 games without a win in the league, and you just thought, right, come on then, let's kick on. Let's show the form that we've been missing for a couple of games, get the players back going, and we had a squad that probably suited his style of play, to be fair, with the players who came in late on in January. But his style football just took us from 5th to 11th. I get we had the what we call Beast from the East that postponed a lot of games, but there's no excuse. Everyone had that problem, and in fact you'd probably say it would favour a new manager coming in. It allows them to work with the players on the training ground for a bit longer. So that didn't go well. Like I say, it took us from 5th to 11th. Had a really bad run in the league, then criticised the football club from top to bottom, and left a sour taste with the fans. At that moment in time, a few of the fans saw it as negativity and just criticising us. Now I look at it as calling out Rahik and Rupp, which when you look at it on reflection now, you probably go, well, I like that. It could have been a bit more specific for me. Biggest problem with that is that we ended up with no manager. I don't know if there were a lot of applicants, but it took us ages to find a manager. 6, some would say this is quite generous, and maybe it's because he's on my roll, maybe it's because I just love him. It's Stuart McCall the second time in this tier list. We needed a bit of entertainment from Gary Bowyer's back end of his spell. We got it with Magic McCall, but he couldn't disappear from COVID, could he? Let's face it, and that massively affected his first half of his spell. Well, not even first half, but it were quite shaky. We're still 4 points away from League Two playoffs, but the problem was COVID came. That cut short that season. We finished 9th under Bowyer and McCall. The next year we spent with no fans, and we didn't expect as much because of COVID and lack of real money spent on the squad. We're still expected to be up and near there because we're a massive club in the division, but I don't think the expectations were as high. Maybe that's because we weren't in the ground, but you did anticipate 22nd when he was sacked, and he attempted to play 3-5-2. We see that continually not work. Didn't really help that Ozana were always injured, so that massively dented his hopes to play that with pace and width. And really, it would just seem that he was copying his best mate in Chris Wilder. Steve wanted to try and build that 3-5-2 with the younger City squad, with Staunton being the centrepiece to that back line. Did he expose him too much potentially? And there were a lot of bad players in that squad, and I think that's why I'm going to put him a bit higher than others would probably, because the lack of fans, he feeds off the fans as McCall, especially at City. The fact that there was very little spent on that squad, and the fact that he had to make do with youth. And the problem with McCall is every time he was at City, it were over heart than head, and he shouldn't have took over really when you look at it that way. Still had Rupp. Sparks his first manager. I don't think he appointed him, but he was the first manager to be sacked by him, and very much in a transition under McCall, and he didn't get given that time. And you probably look at it and say you didn't deserve the time because we could have been in National League with you. So coming in at number 5, I have got the person who replaced him in Mark Truman and Connor Sellers. To be fair, I don't really know who was the front man of that, but it did seem to be Truman more so, with Sellers sort of walking away from the twosome. As caretakers, they deserve to be put a lot higher than they are as managers, because they did a great job. Like I said, took us from 22nd in the league table, took us up towards the playoffs, and we were dreaming of maybe coming back and going to Wembley when the fans were back in the ground. Have just one defeat in 15 games, which was outstanding really, with a squad like I just talked about with McCall, how they galvanised them together. But no expectations on them, and they were basically just allowed to be free, and we played some really good stuff. However, when they were appointed managers, the pressure was on. Playoffs was becoming more of an expectation than a dream, and that massively they had to carry that weight, and that was too heavy for them. After 9 defeats in 15, we massively fell away, finished 15th. The comments came out from Ryan Sparks: "We do not accept mediocrity at this football club." Those comments are still brought up today because it's evident to see that is something we do accept under Stefan Rupp's ownership quite clearly. I know what you're thinking, we're down to 4 and Derek Adams and Gary Bowyer are still there. How is that possible? And I'll tell you how it's possible, because the other lot are just as bloody useless. That's how bad we've been with hiring managers. We've had no strategy, quite clearly, with no ambition and no emotion from the top. If you have no leadership from the top, it's going to be like that all the way down to the bottom, where you find yourselves with all the players we've had who just don't care. And then if you don't have a CEO who knows football well enough to be able to appoint a manager with a clear plan and strategy of how we're going to go in the future, then you're going to appoint loads of managers who have loads of different experiences in the game, who play varied football. And then you get this continuation of being in League Two. So I ask the question to you: who do you choose, Derek Adams or Gary Bowyer, to come above each other? I'm going Derek Adams in 4th and Gary Bowyer in 3rd. Also, when you look at the fact that Bowyer actually did better with the squad in League Two. We got very similar times, but Bowyer, with a worse squad in my opinion, got that squad to, was it 9th, or it was no lower than 9th when he was sacked after that 3-0 defeat to Oldham, and we might have been in the playoffs. I mean, to think of that. So he didn't do too badly, Bowyer, to be fair. On reflection and hindsight, when you look at the league table and you take it back to the performances, I remember being at Oldham and bored to tears, and seeing that 3 at the back, and the players just look clueless and all over the place. And then when you look at the results that we had in that time as well, with no wins in 7 and only 2 wins in 12, you realise that he probably did need to go, and the refresh were needed. And then you look at McCall coming in, and COVID stopped that. So maybe we could have gone up that season, I don't know, but we'll never know. 4th then, Derek Adams, and the Adams family, I suppose. Well, that's what his football were like, crooked, spooky, creepy, and all round ancient. It's just something that you just can't really get on board with, and unfortunately drained the life and soul out of the football club. Then when you take yourself back to that, you realise how good of a job Hughes initially did to bring the fans back together, and now that's quickly going downhill, of course. He was sacked after a 1-0 defeat to Exeter, a dismal display, leaving us 12th with 9 wins from 37 games, which is just nowhere near good enough. So that means in second, the man who's causing all the problems at the minute, the man who's got the attention gun, if that makes sense, this man right here, Mr. Mark Hughes, he is the man who is in second. Funnily enough, like I say, it's crazy to say that, but we've had so many bad managers that he's right up there with one of the best under Stefan Rupp, which clearly explains how bad of a club we've been. Obviously, if you disagree, let me know, but he's my second choice manager, not just because of what he's done in the game either, simply because what he's done at City. He galvanised us at the beginning, although it's actually the beginning that's the worst one he's gone on at City, to be fair. When he came in, we was 8 points away from the playoffs. He took us to 19 points off the playoffs. So, I think after Adams, we all were pretty down and we just need something to believe in for the next season. We sort of just forgot about that season and just left it, which we probably shouldn't have done. That was probably a big mistake, because that season was still rectable, especially in a pretty poor League 2 season, in my opinion. Yeah, the squad wasn't good enough, but 8 points off the playoffs to go then 19 points off the playoffs is pretty poor, and left us 14 for 5 wins. 3 of them were the last 3 games of the season. So it were a terrible start to his career at City, which is often forgot about, to be fair, when we mention Hughes. And when people are Hughes out, and you've got your happy clappers or your massive Hughes ins, which I don't have a problem with if you are, but when people say that, it's only after 8 games of the season or whatever, it's actually after 78 games of Mark Hughes managing City, because the beginning wasn't good enough, and last season a lot of it wasn't good enough. The game management, we concede a lot of late goals. The substitution at Carlisle epitomises that in a nutshell. Literally, if you're going to make a substitution when you've just pulled back, was it 2-2 game back? Scott Banks tearing them apart, you go and bring your centre back on for him and play for penalties. That epitomised the season for me. Poor substitutions and poor in-game tactics to then sit back on leads and draws, which cost us wins and points. But you can't hide from the fact that he did get us to a playoff semi-final and did get a tune out of Andy Cook scoring 30-odd goals. And last season, you say it wasn't a successful season, but it was a season where we progressed. But he has averaged 1.53 points per game whilst he's been at City. That is around 70 points, which in average League 2 seasons, especially last season as well, doesn't get you in the playoffs. And last season was, for me, one of the easiest League 2 seasons. Stuart McCall, the second time, has to be the best Bradford City manager since Stefan Rupp. I was going to say in my lifetime, but then I completely forgot we had Phil Parkinson, of course. But I think he's got a better points per game record in that second spell than Phil Parkinson. I think he's one of our most successful managers in that spell. Very unfairly sacked. For me, the most unfairly sacked manager at City under Rupp, but possibly in the lifetime. I've only followed us since 14-15 of my first real season, to be fair, of going sort of week in, week out, so I can only speak from then. But if you're an older fan or a more experienced fan, to make it sound a bit better, let me know your thoughts on all previous managers as well. Was Stuart McCall the second time the most unfair sacking? Because we only lost 5 league games, we were still in the playoffs, we still had a chance to keep going with that season, and to be fair, that team that he was sacked with wasn't a particularly strong team for me. I look at it and I think, well, few of them survived to take us into a relegation season. We had the problems going on with Eddie Reich. He fell out with him at the time. That was clear and obvious, really. I mean, when you look at the Matter of Heart documentary, you could tell he was a bit frustrated with him, taking over, and that was the previous season. And then there were rumours of him potentially getting sacked previous to the bad run, and in the summer. So you could tell there was something going on behind the scenes with him and Reich, and they were waiting for a bad run. That was clear to see. The Wimbledon game was poor, but he had Ruben Slattelmeyer in that. Front-footed, get the ball in the right areas, get cross into a box. I think it was 4-4-2, which always gets behind the fans, doesn't it? Let's be honest. And a team that had fight and embodied what a Bradford City team is. So yeah, he's just clearly the best manager out of these lot in that second time. There's excuses you can always make from McCall because we all love him, of course, but I don't think a fourth time is on the cards, to be fair. But from Stefan Rupp taking over, whether it's because of Rupp, whether it's because of the managers, whether it's down to the players, the recruitment, the CEOs he's had, there's all the excuses you can make about this football club's downhill regression. But there's only one man who's been the consistent apart from the fans, and constantly the fans have always been there and there's been ups and downs. The one man that's always been there is Stefan Rupp. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below in general on today's topics. Subscribe if you're new, all the support is massively appreciated. Have a good one.